Reasonable, moderate, well, they can't mean that when they say that. What's this based on? Absolutely nothing.
But the only way to verify the ambiguous claim that there is some criticism worth responding to is to once again strap on waiters and—
No, it's not. Just ask them what the specific criticism is. It's funny how the leopards have yet to eat her face, despite her being an open conservative who says conservative things. I don't even do that, because I'm not a conservative. But somehow I'm in the same boat, and the leopards are going to eat my face too. Well, it doesn't seem like it happens very often. Meanwhile, someone like ContraPoints literally had her fucking face eaten off by the leopards.
Let's not pretend leftists and liberals have the moral high ground all the time. Interrogate... I am no longer asking. Sign the up.
So yeah, I want to talk about Innuendo Studios. It's the alt-right playbook people. Like, I thought this channel had like fallen off, but they seem to get okay views. That might just be because they don't upload very often though. I mean, you can see this art style. That definitely warrants them 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 11 months, a year. We've got a year, 2 years after like, what, 6 videos a year or something like that, which this art style totally warrants. But no, this person got famous for this kind of thing, the alt-right playbook. And I remember this shit. This was big back in the day. Like 5 years ago when the alt-right was still a thing. Is the alt-right still a thing now? Not really, but hey, you do scripted video with art then. I could do that fucking easily. Why does this person need 2 months between videos? What are you talking about? But yeah, this is what this person is famous for, as I was saying. I'll show you an example, and then I will show you why I'm talking about them. It's because they've had Philosophy Tube on there. Nice. So yeah, this is the first one I'm going to show. The alt-right playbook. Why don't you respond to criticism?
Say, for the sake of argument, you're the kind of progressive lefty with a platform who gets a share of harassment, seasonal or perennial, from reactionaries. In this
This is cringe as fuck already. Maybe this person has something to do IRL. I don't care.
Situation, you will inevitably hear one who positions themselves as a reasonable moderate ask, why don't—
This is ContraPoints already. This is just reasonable moderate. Well, they can't mean that when they say that. What's this based on? Absolutely nothing.
One who positions themselves as a reasonable moderate ask, why don't you respond to criticism?
That'd be a fair question to ask someone who never engages with criticism, for sure.
There's a lot going on in that question, more than is immediately obvious, and it's worth understanding. First, is that the question is not only directed at you. It exists as a marker, showing up in your Q&As, your comment sections, your Twitter threads, to imply to anyone paying attention to you that there is some wealth of legitimate criticism that you have long ignored.
What? This is stupid. What is he talking about? Doesn't it rather depend on who they're talking to? And whether or not that person ever engages with criticism ever? Concern trolling is a real good thing. One guy did once, and that justifies never engaging with anyone who disagrees with you on any small level. Yeah, it's starting to seem that way. It's interesting you say that, because the word concern was the thing that ContraPoints was doing the whole thing about. And where I've got the whole ContraPoints criticism from. Hey, if you like the stream, you should like the stream and check the links in my description. Love you.
More than is immediately obvious, and it's worth understanding. First, is that the question is not only directed at you. It exists as a marker, showing up in your Q&A.
Like, where are we getting any of this from?
Your comment sections, your Twitter threads, to imply to anyone paying attention to you that there is some wealth of legitimate criticism that you have long ignored.
Well, do they mean it that way? Do they think that there's a wealth of criticism? What if there is a wealth of criticism? Why not respond to any of it? Why ignore all the criticism? You know what I mean? Mentis Wave. I've heard of him before. I think I've seen the odd video.
There may well be a specific point this person is referring to, but it's often left unspecified or...
Well, no, it's unspecified because that's what the title of the video is, so that's what you're coining as the question. But the question can take many forms. The question could be, hey, Brianna Wu, why don't you respond to criticism about you kissing Keffels' ass right up until the very, very last moment, or something like that.
generalized, so that the content and the quantity of the criticism.
Because unspecified, generalized, lacking in content, this is the kind of shit that I get. If I were to start reading through my comments on videos about popular people, where some of their fans come over and give me shit for it, that's exactly the kind of shit that I'd be getting. But I'm not the lefty. The lefties are the ones coming at me. So I don't know how this is an alt-right playbook thing. What's this got to do with the alt-right? By the way, this September 20th, 2024. Who's that oh, maybe they've got stuff to do. If they've got stuff to do, and they've got like a job and shit like that, why do they need all this Patreon shit exactly? Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, what is this? I know.
Is left to audience imagination.
Yeah, this is the exact same shit I get from the other side. So why is this an alt-right thing?
It is meant to publicly undermine your legitimacy. Second, it's meant to...
Yeah, but they might just also want to know why you never respond to criticism. Someone might legitimately ask me, why haven't you responded to X criticism? And I can maybe respond to it there. Maybe someone's a bit frustrated with like a particular aspect of someone where they don't respond to any criticism or don't respond to a specific criticism that's actually fair and that they probably should respond to. What has this got to do with the alt-right? This is just any thought cult that disagrees with you. Any group that takes umbrage with you does this kind of thing. It's got nothing to do with the alt-right or reactionaries.
To make you question whether there is some legitimate criticism out there in the din of...
Well, no. It's very simple. You write back, what's an example? What criticism are you talking about? It's not difficult. You can answer that kind of shit.
People screaming at you. You're not perfect, and a knock-on effect of being harassed is you get numbed out, unable to discern good faith from bad, often removing yourself from the very streams through which your peers used to correct you because of the endless flow of garbage coming through those channels now.
That just sounds like being a pussy. Yeah, occasionally, when it's one thing after another, it can weigh a little bit on me. I'm still doing like one of the easiest things in the world, as long as you have half a brain. One of the most preferable things, because I'm at home all day, because I don't have to go answer to someone else. Like, come on.
But the only way to verify the ambiguous claim that there is some criticism worth responding to is to once again strap on waiters and...
No, it's not. Just ask them what the specific criticism is. Why does this have to be a thing? Why are we pretending that every sensible option doesn't exist? I hate this shit. What the fuck? You want $2,000 a fucking month for this shit, yeah? $2,000? Sorry. $4,000 per video, pretty much? Because it's every 2 months?
And climb back in, which is often what your critic really wants.
Is it? How would you know? Are you psychic?
Third, well, the question isn't really, why don't you respond to criticism?
Except when it is.
Odds are you do respond to some criticism.
I cannot watch another second of this utter bullshit. This is stupid. And it's like, this video is what, about 5 minutes long? And he posts twice, like 6 times a year, let's say? Taking like $2,000 on Patreon? Like, are you serious? Anyway, because that video wasn't bad enough, he did a video with Philosophy Tube who helped write and voice this thing. Amazing. What we need in our lives is more Philosophy Tube. So, double wrong. Let's see what double wrong is.
Say, for the sake of argument, you're having a discussion with a coworker about healthcare.
I'm glad they found a more manly voice than the guy that was doing last one. Like, male British accent better than male American accent. That's just how it is. Don't at me.
Actually, let's go ahead and drop the pretense. You're having a discussion about trans healthcare. He says puberty blockers should be banned because some study said they're dangerous. And you're a thoughtful...
Which is, of course, the only reason that anyone has to want to ban puberty blockers. Because some study said they're bad. Amazing.
...person, so you look it up. Only when you do, you find the study doesn't say what he said it does. Maybe it says something close, maybe it says the total opposite. But more than that, you realize, even if it said what he said it did...
Like, what is this shit? We're not going to last much of this, because this is so stupid. Fogged with boogers. No. PhilosophyTube is an actor now. PhilosophyTube is on the fucking Star Wars grind. That's what that is.
That still wouldn't support...
Allegedly.
...his argument. Dangerous could mean a lot of things. A little? A lot?
Let's come up with a really weird fucking scenario in which the other person is like cartoonishly wrong in every obvious way imaginable.
Low risk? High risk? Maybe one study isn't enough to go on. Hell,
yeah, but male South African... Is male South African better than male British? I don't know about that. I'm glad there's a male British voice is what I'm saying. I think that's very good. I think that's the best kind of accent for this kind of thing.
Maybe it's bogus for a whole host of other reasons. Maybe it's written by people with an obvious agenda, or contradicted by a better study he's ignoring. So yeah, a host of other reasons. Maybe it's written by people with
an obvious agenda. How would you determine anyone having an obvious agenda? Especially when your brain is equally fucked and you have your own obvious agenda.
Obvious agenda, or contradicted by a better study he's ignoring.
I love it. The previous video was talking about like overgeneralized criticism, and here we are with an extremely general thing that has got nothing to do with anything because it's just made up.
So you go back and tell your coworker, hey, the study doesn't say that, and even if it did, but he simply repeats, the study said they're dangerous.
They can't make this argument from the other side. Half of the time the studies aren't even like anything to do with it. Look at the authors. Okay, how do you determine that any of the authors are pushing an agenda? I love it. Toaster Cleaner. You always want to debate bro me in my chat, but like your points are always really dumb, no offense.
But he simply repeats, the study said they're dangerous. He's not just wrong, he's double wrong. Institution.
This is so dumb. I'm not going to last much of this. They're just making things up. Whose argument is this? Who are you actually talking about when you talk about this person?
Create policy documents all the time. Anti-bullying policies, climate policies, DEI policies. Your job probably has a bunch of them. But a lot of the time, these documents exist not to be read or followed, just pointed to. If someone is bullied, harassed, or discriminated against, managers might point to a policy that says, we are committed to not doing that. And that's it.
How many normal jobs has fucking PhilosophyTube worked?
The more you insist, hey, these policies aren't being followed, the problem still exists, the more you...
Oh, so now we're whining about... Like, what is... I'm having trouble following, because we were talking about someone being wrong about studies. And then, like, now we're on a bad manager? When was the last time you had a manager? Fucking Abigail. Oh, hi, how's the Thornbush? I'm good, yeah, I'm good.
Become the problem. The document is a dummy argument, a substitute for the real one. There's a problem versus no, there isn't. This isn't a conversation about what some document says or doesn't say. It's a conversation about power.
Where's the link between this and that?
When your coworker cites a study that doesn't support his argument, he's using that document in a similar way. He's not reading it, just...
Yeah, people do this to me all the time as well. Literally, you could apply this in either direction. So why is it the alt-right playbook? Exactly. People misread studies and fucking bring that to my door all the time. What are you fucking talking about? And I don't use studies in that way. I don't say, this study, therefore I think this. Yeah, I meant in real life, you dumb fuck.
Just pointing to it. This piece of paper means you have to listen to me.
How do you see in real life that someone is pushing a political agenda?
The study could be about plankton, or Henry VIII, or squirrel poop for all the difference it makes. Okay, maybe it matters a little.
Wasn't she one of the singing witches, like the ones doing the stupid chant? That's like the only thing I've seen in that Star Wars thing.
It has to at least look semi-legit at a glance. He's not using evidence to inform his position. He's decided what his position is, and he's pantomiming evidence to support it. It's almost as if we've stumbled into the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Little Mickey's put on the hat and declared, I know how this works. You stand up all big and tall and say, I have a study that says you have to do what I tell you. That's how you always play it. Well, this time...
Philosophy, listen, I've worked in a call center, or a contact center, should I say. She wouldn't have lasted any fucking time at all in my job that I did. Lots of people don't, because for some reason, even though it was an easy job, almost no one could fucking fathom how to actually do it. So I don't know.
I've got to study, so you have to do as I say. And you can tell him, that's not how this works, Mickey.
People do that to me all the time. How is this an alt-right playbook thing?
It's a study, not an incantation. It has to actually say what you claim, and it has to be a good study. Oh, look at you, moving the goalposts. Look at you, gatekeeping, deciding which studies count and which ones don't. Well, I believe this one's...
Gatekeeping is not a fucking alt-right term. Who on the alt-right says gatekeeping?
every bit as good as yours, and I believe it proves me right. And...
Again, literally a thing that people on your say all the time.
Is that what he believes? Maybe. Maybe not. Remember, the card says moops. You can't prove he doesn't believe that, and for the purposes of you have to listen to me, that's all he needs. This is a battle of wills now, not information. Each half of the double wrong argument functioning as both Mott and Bailey. If you successfully...
Yep, all projection, all completely unsubstantiated as to why it's an alt-right thing, and not a thing that freaks on this side of the aisle could literally just do, because they do all the time. I get this shit constantly. It's bizarre that we're equating this with the alt-right, let alone in 2025. Who the fuck says alt-right in 2025? Who the fuck is the alt-right anymore? Who's an alt-righter? Like what, Richard Spencer? When was the last time anyone talked about Richard Spencer, who's like a liberal nowadays?
Expose that study as bogus, he'll move on to another, and you'll only be undermining the scientific method in his view. If studies aren't always to be trusted, if even quack science can get peer-reviewed, who's to say your studies aren't as bogus as his? And that's if he doesn't change...
Well then why not grow a brain and realize that studies are just fucking evidence towards or against something? You know what I mean? Why treat studies like fucking things you slap down and say, there you go, actually I'm right? Why do any of that?
Evidence entirely. Okay, maybe I can't prove puberty blockers are dangerous, but this study says trans kids have high regret rates. This one says they're unhappy. This one says they're brainwashed. He's understood the rhetorical function of science, but not the substance. Or perhaps...
Well, are you going to go into the substance on any of those? How do you know any of these have... How do you know any of these have any problems? Oh wait, you're making all of it up.
He's understood the rhetorical function all too well, enough to know, for the purposes of argument, substance rarely matters. From here, you can chart the course of the entire conversation, stretching out before you. You might...
Yeah, I could chart the fucking conversation from the other way. That's the problem. What's this got to do with the alt-right?
Might rush in, hold the document under his nose and say, look, it doesn't say what you said it does. What's the matter? Can't read? Which might be satisfying, but does make you look the pedantic asshole. Or you can reject his so-called evidence as patently false, inadmissible, and leave yourself vulnerable.
Yeah, or for example, you could just decide that a word only has two meanings when it actually has more than two meanings. And then make a whole bunch of assertions about problems with a person's actual person. Because they're using a definition that you personally aren't familiar with. Oh, hi, McMad.
To being obliterated the moment you make an honest mistake with a citation. Or you can research every single shred of information he puts in front of you so you can thoroughly debunk each and every one, which means he simply keeps putting bunk in front of you and drowns you with homework.
Yeah, I get the exact same thing from TRAs all the time.
And he must see it too, the conversation laid out in front of him. He hasn't positioned himself to persuade you, but to ensure neither of you ever persuades the other.
Yeah, Richard Spencer is a fucking liberal these days. He was like the poster boy alt-rightist back in the day when this fuck was like popular. Because shitting on the alt-right was the popular thing to do. He's a liberal now. He probably still has those like white nationalist beliefs. The left does that too. All of this shit, this isn't alt-right. This is a problem on both sides of the aisle. Because it's got nothing to do with reactionaries. It's got nothing to do with the alt-right, which doesn't exist anymore. No one calls it the alt-right. That's a very old term. It's like calling someone a gammon, for example.
What is the purpose of this debate then? This ritual? What is it you're really arguing about? Well, your coworker believes that the government, or a doctor doing what the government tells them, should force citizens from a minority...
God, this fantasy is getting very rich and detailed. Your co-worker, your fictional co-worker from the start of the video. When was the last time you worked a real job, Abigail, for the 20th time? Whatever it is. What the fuck do you know what it's like working whilst being trans and occasionally having to hear opinions you don't necessarily like very much? I'll tell you something. None of this happens. You just kind of get on with it.
minority to do something with their bodies they don't want to do. But he won't say that out loud, because he knows that's socially unacceptable.
Alt-right has been relegated to the guts of the internet. Liberals, on the other hand, openly go extreme. Are you sure you're talking about liberals and not progressives?
I want the government to force people to do what I want with their bodies, no matter how many of them die in the process, is an opinion that isn't likely to make friends. So he substitutes the document.
Yeah, but how would you know that he has that opinion? You're just... What it sounds like when people do this, make up someone's argument. What it sounds like is you can't fathom why they would think that. So you make up your own reason of something you can fathom. You know what I mean? What is my opinion on the dangerous idea that the rightful King of England is a German baron no one outside of Germany has heard of? Should we warn against this? I couldn't give a fuck about the monarchy. I don't know why we still have one, honestly, but I don't know. I'm sure it's probably bad/good, insert as appropriate. I don't know. What do you think? I agree with it. There you go. There you go. I'm sorry, that was a terrible answer. I just don't care about the monarchy, though. I truly don't give a fuck.
Opinion that isn't likely to make friends. So he substitutes the document for the thing he really believes.
This is such a cancerous way of thinking. This is such a cancerous way of trying to think you know how other people think. And it's being made out that it's a political... It's one aisle's fucking issue, you know what I mean? Which is just lies. This is just bullshit. This is patent fucking bullshit.
It's not me, it's just science. He is appealing to facts when, truthfully, this is a difference in values. Double wrong is a rhetorical technique to catch you out, to hide the real argument from you and leave you chasing the substitute. It also...
Yeah, see, most of the people I argue with, they don't give me a real argument or a substitute. It's just, you're dumb, lol, or you're trying to appeal to people who want to kill you, which interestingly, people say that about Blair White all the time, and have been saying that about her for almost 10 years or so. It's funny how the leopards have yet to eat her face, despite her being an open conservative who says conservative things. I don't even do that, because I'm not a conservative. But somehow I'm in the same boat, and the leopards are going to eat my face too. Well, it doesn't seem like it happens very often. Meanwhile, someone like ContraPoints literally had her fucking face eaten off by the leopards. Because you're the fucking leopards.
Protects him. People deploy these kinds of irrational, paradoxical moves to stop themselves thinking about topics that make them uncomfortable. If your co-worker interrogated his values about the proper relationship between the government and minorities, he might find he's not the person he thought he was, or that his friends and colleagues expect him to be. And you might too. Let's not pretend leftists and liberals have the moral high ground all the time. Interrogating your fundamental values is an uncomfortable experience for most. Relationship between the government and minorities, he might find he's not the person he thought he was, or that his friends and colleagues expect him to be. And you might too. Let's not pretend leftists and liberals have the moral high ground all the time. Interrogate...
Oh my god. Oh my god, I fucking hate you. I hate you so much. You're so disgusting. I hope you realize this, Abigail. I hope you realize this. You and this fucking guy who takes $2,000 to do a video every fucking 2 months and then has Nebula. Really, bro? One of the... Who's Afraid of Gender by Judith Butler. The cast review is bad science. Transactual. Yeah, I really fucking trust Transactual. Transactual editor. I've seen things by Transactual before. They seem fucking nuts. They seem insane. Utterly deranged is what they seem. Anyway, I'm not fucking reading this shit. I'll read it some other time, maybe, if I feel like I hate myself often enough. Being a bread tuber is a good grift. It really isn't. Most of them have fallen off hard. Like, this guy's a legacy YouTuber. Like, his shit was big, like, fucking years ago. So now what happens is he still gets all the Patreon shit from all the people that never bothered unsubscribing from Patreon. Even though they probably don't watch this utter shit anymore. And that's how it works. It was a good grift back in 2015 or some shit. I don't know. Whenever the fuck this was. 2018, I think, was when he was big. I can't remember.
Interrogating your fundamental values is an uncomfortable experience for most people. He probably wants to think of himself as a good...
Like, think about it this way. Try becoming a bread tuber today. It's probably not going to get you very far. Because it's all old shit that everyone has heard before. And it's being, like, destroyed. Even other bread tubers themselves were destroying BreadTube. Like, at some points, ContraPoints, before she became a fucking sellout. Like, at some points, people like Destiny.
Good person. And yet, he also believes, maybe not even consciously, that the government should own the bodies of at least some citizens. He knows he'd probably hate that if it happened to him.
No one. Does anyone think this? Does anyone think, the government should own people's bodies? Who thinks that? Who are you talking about? Why do you get to make all these generalized claims because it's a person you made up? It's disgusting. You're making people think in really dodgy, really disgusting ways.
But he still wants it to happen to others. Double wrong relieves him of the burden of forming a rational position. The document is his nice, big...
Having already been one is a great grift. Yeah, well, it's like any fucking pyramid scheme, right? You're at the top of the pyramid, then you get all the fucking applause. I mean, look at where people like H-Bomber Guy is today. ContraPoint's made her millions, mostly off of transitioning, but transitioning and being a bread tuber. But like, the people that are trying to do that shit today, first off, they've got nothing else to say because it's all been done already. And second off, there's just not an audience for that shit anymore. Like, a bunch of this guy's living comes off people who probably forgot to unsubscribe to him on Patreon, quite honestly. And then they've got Nebula. Like, oh, gross. Gross, gross, gross. Disgusting. Disgusting.
Safety blanket. This plays on a human weakness that spans the entire political spectrum. We all wrap ourselves snug in faulty information from time to time. We share...
The Nazis had, like... They had a literal fucking contingency of socialists. Socialists joined the Nazi party.
Studies without reading because the abstract conforms to our assumptions.
Evolution has been debunked. Evolution teaches us that there are two sexes, my dude.
We treat a supposition that is likely as though it's a proven fact, and this is, after a point, necessary. As informed as you are, you do have to stop researching somewhere. You do... And this is, after a point, necessary. As informed...
Holodomor wasn't a genocide. The thing is, listen, I'm just thinking the way that they're thinking. They might just say this because the alternative is to admit that maybe communism wasn't that good after all.
Informed as you are, you do have to stop researching somewhere. You do, at some point, have to go on assumptions. Take someone...
Abigail Thorne thinks that children should transition as early as possible so that they can get laid. There you go. I can make up things about people too. This is all alleged. I have no evidence for that claim that I made.
Someone's word, trust that the pattern holds, because the video is due before the end of the month if you want to charge your patrons and make rent.
I cannot read that. Like, what is this fucking shitty ass font?
Sorry. But we do sometimes treat research as a ritual rather than a method, because often we want to appeal to facts, papers, authorities, without having to do any of that pesky reasoning. But that is exactly what leaves us...
Yeah, you might do research and think the word grooming literally means either grooming a dog or fucking someone when they're underage, for example. And then someone might not need to do any research to prove that's not the case, because you can just type in to something if you want the verb form of that word, for example. Sorry, McMahon, I'll stop making fun of you now, but you are a fucking retard, just so we're clear.
Open to a double wrong attack. The flaw with your co-worker's study is he's using it to claim trans healthcare is dangerous, and he's wrong. He has a comeback for every way you could try to convince him. But he's still wrong. You can't prove trans healthcare is safe by gesturing at studies, because the opposition won't read them.
You can't prove that trans healthcare is safe anyway, because it isn't. If it was safe, we wouldn't have all these kids coming out in their early 20s saying, I got my breasts hacked off and now I will never breastfeed my kid. I took testosterone for 4 years and now I don't know if I can even have kids, but I've changed my mind on the trans thing. So yeah, it's not safe. That's why you can't prove it is safe.
And will write their own studies. You can't prove it with peer review because they'll gain peer review. You can't call them liars.
Peer review can have the same problems no matter whether it's pro-trans or anti-trans science. I'm so sorry to break it to you, Abigail.
Because they'll insist they're sincere. There is no rule they can't pervert, no system they can't twist to their advantage. You can't just appeal to things that signify reason.
She could literally be talking about herself with this.
At some point, one of you will have to do some actual reasoning to figure out who's making sense. And, well, it's not going to be them. Remember, this is a conversation.
As if people reason with me. They don't reason with me. They make one attempt to half reason with me, and then just make up a bunch of shit about me that must be true because their first attempt at reasoning with me, that was usually utter dog shit, didn't work. This has got nothing to do with the alt-right whatsoever. This is like an actual fucking grift. This is like just lying to people at this point. Like, the only reason that this fucking idiot puts the alt-right playbook on the front of their videos is because that's what gets the clicks. That's what this guy's known for. The alt-right playbook. Like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like if we go for most popular, it's all going to be alt-right playbook videos. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Yeah, pretty much. Jesus Christ. And maybe they have fallen off, to be fair, actually. 5 years ago, 5 years ago, 5 years ago, 9 years ago, 9 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 6 years ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, etc., etc., etc. When do we get to modern stuff? 1 year ago. And it's still the alt-right playbook. I guess he's slapping this title on things and enjoying the diminishing returns whenever his fucking bank balance somehow is looking slightly slim despite taking over $2,000 a month from people, which is more money than I've ever seen in my life from doing normal jobs. Oh, here we go. And there's this video, right? Well, no, the one that I just watched, sorry. Negging and love bot. That's got nothing to do with the alt-right. That's like abuse shit you're talking about. God, this channel sucks. What a fucking loser. I'm so glad you've fallen off. Innuendo Studios. Disgusting.
About values. Presuming you know what yours are, you may have to speak them aloud. I think people should do what they like with their bodies without politicians interfering. And even if I thought puberty blockers were dangerous, which by the way they're not.
Oh yeah, and of course they have the Cal Horton. This Cal Horton person is extremely suspect. I've heard them talking. They seem to be upset with the cast review because their shit was seen as, you know, not high enough quality to be considered. So they seem pretty spurned right off the bat. They also seem very personally invested because they too are trans and they too seem to have a specific belief system. So basically what we're doing is pretending that this problem doesn't exist on the other side and using their names as appeal to authority. Using Cal Horton's name is the opposite of an appeal to authority. I do not trust that person at all with this shit.
They're not, because on the off chance you actually care about evidence here.
Yeah, half of it's fucking Cal Horton, informed consent model, associated with high patient satisfaction. How? Is it testimonial? Are there reasons why testimony might not be the most trustworthy thing, especially when we're talking about a politicized group, such as trans, for example?
Here's all the good stuff. I think people have the right to make...
Jesus Christ, she is such a ghoul, man. She's so disgusting. What's Wait, hang on. No, this one is linked. Never mind. Mental health assessment. That's something that's vocalized, aren't they? Higher proportion in the GPSF group was extremely satisfied with their overall care. Based on what? Based on what they tell you? Like, this isn't very good science, you understand, if that's the case. Hang on, I'm trying to... Patient satisfaction survey. So they were surveyed. So it's what they tell you. And if it's a politicized group, they might feel like they have to tell you that it's going well, whether it is or not. They might not feel much, but they might be on that path so much that they just see any progress down that path as good, whether it is or not. Because they don't know that they're not going to detransition in like 5 years, let's say. So this isn't amazing from what I can see, but to be completely fair, I haven't looked at the whole thing. Anyway.
Risky decisions about their healthcare too. If there was a drug with a 1% chance of healing your terminal cancer and a 99% chance of dangerous side effects, I'd support your right to take it if you wanted. Now you've avoided the
That's stupid.
trap of arguing about what some document says. You're focusing on the second, deeper part of the double wrong instead of the first. You've also put him on the back foot. Now he has to justify his values, which is exactly what he wanted to avoid.
So how come you don't see Philosophy Tube ever doing debates or anything like that? If she's so good at this, if she knows how to argue with people, why does she never debate anyone?
Of course, he may just repeat himself. The study says they're dangerous. This is not a technique for winning arguments.
Yeah, the thing is, there are so many better arguments for why children shouldn't transition. Such as, do they understand the permanence of the decision that they're making? Are they 100% sure as a 10-year-old that they're fine with being sterile for the rest of their life, being a forever patient, which is what happens when you're trans? It's actually quite stressful, especially if you struggle a little bit managing your own medication, which some of us do. Do they understand that at their age? Can they? Is that something they're capable of understanding? There are so many better arguments than, I found a study that says puberty blockers are bad.
It's a technique for starting them.
Thank you, Abby, for doing this video with me. Everybody watching, if you're not already
That was terrible. By the way, this is such an ugly picture. Why are you still using it?
subscribed to Philosophy Tube, I highly recommend checking it out. Abby is a wonderful person, gives great hugs.
Oof. No, maybe keep the picture. It seems like you don't have any good ones.
And her videos have honestly gotten me through some tough times. Outside the world of video essays, Abby is in.
Okay, well, it seems obvious as to why you're so insane. And then the rest of this is the Nebula fucking... The Nebula ad is like 2 minutes long. How nice. I don't need to watch that. I think Nebula seems pretty fucking gross, to be honest. It's got you, it's got Abigail Thorne. It's got all the fucking losers that I never want to hear from. But yeah, terrible video. Don't know what that has to do with the alt-right whatsoever when half of those techniques discussed are literally things that I deal with all the time, on the regular. Except even worse. Because these people seem to insist that they are moral somehow, and that they're on some moral crusade, which they are not. So there you go. 2 shit YouTubers make a shit video together.